Hey y'all, so this truck here is one that I painted probably 6 or 7 years ago for a buddy of mine that owns a small mechanic shop similar to mine. He'd had it one or two other places, and they just done a complete hack job on it, basically robbed him. This is also probably the cheapest financially wise paint job I've ever done, so excuse any minor paint defects or whatever. This one was done on the cheap. It turned out pretty good. So I'll give you a quick tour of it outside before I take it inside. This one was done kind of piecemeal. I started with just the bare shell, the cab, and the doors. Painted them, then took it home for he took it home and then brought me, I think, the fenders and the hood, and so it was all painted separate. Everything turned out pretty close color match. It's a work in progress. He painted the interior himself, then wisely decided that he was going to pay somebody that's done it a little longer to do it. It's just a work in progress he's been building over the years. He don't have no reason to finish it in no hurry, but it was in pretty rough shape when we got it. But it's sitting on a 90s half-ton chassis with half-ton engine, or a half-ton suspension. Had to do a pretty good chop on the back of the cab to get it to channel over the frame. There's my chickens and my cat. Anyways, it turned out pretty dang good, all things considered. He was super happy with it, and that's all that really matters. He did all the final assembly himself, with the exception of the door fit. That's a bastard on these trucks always. But I think he's gonna get the seats recovered at some point in time. He brought it over because it's got some pretty good paint contamination from sitting in his shop for years. It needs quite a bit of work on the top sides. Super clean, but it needs clay barred, and I'll probably let you follow along when I start doing that, just see how it goes. Hey y'all, so today I'm going to try to breathe some life into the top surfaces of this truck's paint. This is my favorite thing to use for minor detail work, paint surface contamination. This is what it comes with. That's also what I use for like car show detailing spray, stuff like that. It works really well. It doesn't streak unless you're, trying to wash tar off your car with it, which you're using that wrong anyways if you're doing that. But anyways, what we're gonna try to do is bring some gloss into this paint. It's got a lot of surface contamination on it. The guy washed it and waxed it, and it's still got a lot of stuff in it. With this truck, I'm not gonna be able to bring back all of it. Reason being, there are two things I'm fighting. One is obviously the surface contamination. Who knows what's on here? That sits in a mechanic shop all the time with no cover on it most of the time, and it's sat outside. The second problem is the part I'm not gonna be able to do much for is this truck was painted with some pretty cheap paint products. The owner had already bought all that stuff a long time before, and like I said, it already started painting like the interior, so that's what he wanted to use. And when you do that with the clear coat especially, you get it goes on pretty thin. It doesn't have much volume. You wind up with a lot of shrink back, and then this thing sat outside a lot, so you wind up with a lot of material shrinkage, and there just is quite honestly nothing you can do about that other than scuffing and re-clearing the whole truck, which we're not gonna do. This guy's just taking it to a show tomorrow, and he just wanted the paint to feel smooth on the top, so I'll set you up and we'll get started. I'm not sure how in depth this is gonna have to get. Hopefully it'll clean up just with this. It might slick up quite a bit, but I might also end up having to run my buffer and some compound over the top sides just to slick it up and get some moisture back in the paint. And get some shine back into it. But if I have to do that, then I'll bring you along for that too. I'm just gonna do the fender right now, just the top of it, to see what we're gonna get into. I'm not gonna do the whole vehicle while y'all watch, but I'll get you set up and we'll get started with the clay bar. A lot of people don't have any idea how to do anything, you know, as far as basic paint cleanup on newer cars or whatever. This applies to any vehicle. So hopefully you learn something, and hopefully we'll make this truck look a little better. All right, the first step is going to be to just give the surface a good wipe down to make sure you don't have any contaminants already on it. Like I said, this was waxed the other day and washed, so there's not really much on there, but I'm gonna wipe it anyways. You don't wanna have any extra contaminants in there when you start trying to clay bar it. Had a little dust. Next step is to take your clay bar. I like to kind of smash it into a round surface, kind of stretch it out a little bit. Like kind of a big surface area. I don't like using just a little bitty piece. When we get started, this will start pulling the contaminants off real fast. You'll be able to tell how much you're pulling off the surface by just looking at it. Once it starts to get dirty, you want to change it out pretty quick. You don't want to have potentially little metal flakes or anything else in there that you're rubbing all over the whole truck. So you got to be attentive to what's going on. Flip it, knead it, whatever you got to do. Next step is going to be to mist some of the quick detailer onto it. And you just put it on there and real lightly the first couple of passes. It's real abrasive, you can hear it. Yeah, it's already pulled a ton of debris off of there. It's still pretty rough to the touch. Let's use the other side. It's turning dark, like the liquid that's on there. It's a pretty good indicator that it's got some fairly substantial amount of contamination. Normally after you wash a car and you do this, you don't get that. It's pretty nasty. I don't feel anything that's real rough, but it's pretty bad. So what we're gonna do, I'll do the whole top side real quick with this. You got to be real careful to use light pressure at this stage so that you don't grind it into the surface if it picks up something that's abrasive. You don't want to destroy your paint. Because while clay bars work really well, they do have a downside, and that is this stuff sticks to the paint, or sticks to the clay bar and can scratch your clear. If you scratch the clear, that's no good. Yeah, this is really bad. Normally you're not going to get anywhere near that much stuff off. I've got a bucket of water that I use just with a damp towel to wipe this off. This is going to have to be turned already, so I'm going to have to knead it up. Give the surface a wipe down. The paint surface already feels a lot better. I probably will run my buffer over this. Just put a little shine back into the top side. It's going to be a little dull. Just with this much contamination, there's just going to be some swirls and stuff put into it. Already, it's substantially smoother. A lot of this, some of the texture you can see here is actually just basically shrink back and clear that is just dried and shrunk. So we're not going to be able to do much of anything there. That's just a paint problem. That would most of that would go away if you scuffed the whole truck with like a gray Scotch-Brite pad and re-cleared it, which isn't that big of a deal. You just end up having to wet sand it again when you get done. But this guy's not going for that level of detailing. Just wants the paint to be smooth and feel good. Be able to wash it and wax it without feeling like he's attacking it with sandpaper. All right. I'm only going to do this fender on camera. I'll do the rest of it. And the roof doesn't look like it's nearly as bad as the hood and the front fenders. And the back fenders are pretty decent. So I assume that this was just, the front of the truck was just closest to his workbench, so it collected the most of the damage. We'll repeat. Repeat again. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's real smooth. It's not catching any more debris. In most of your daily driver cars, that even brand new stuff, this is usually about all you'll have to do to breathe some life back into the paint. And it makes a big difference just in how smooth it feels. Once you get it smooth like this and you use a good wax on it, it's a lot easier to keep clean. When you have a porous, dirty surface, dirt and bird poop and everything sticks to it real bad. Once you get it slicked up, clay barred out, then it's a much easier to keep clean. So paint protection is important. If you want your paint to look good for a long time, you have to take care of it. You have to wax it at least once a year, wash it good. Don't let bird poop sit on it for a long time. All right, we'll give it one more wipe down and then clay bar it once more. This is just a damp paper towel, water on it. It already looks better, for sure, from where I'm standing anyways. And it definitely feels better. Much better. So I'll wipe my hand on this surface and then on the hood right next to the camera. You'll be able to hear the difference in the contaminants, or lack thereof now. This is what I've done. And this is the undone surface. And then this. So it's doing its job, clearly. So we'll hit it one more time. I'll probably break out the buffer and just hit it with a fine polishing compound. It's not very aggressive. You can use the little orbital hand buffers you can buy. Work really well for just putting a little shine back into it after you get done working the paint. Now, if I really wanted to get this thing super flat and I had the time and the customer wanted to pay to do it, what would be optimal would be to lightly wet sand it with 2000 or 3000 grit sandpaper, and then just go ahead and buff it out using a normal process. But this is just a real quick job. He dropped it off yesterday morning and he's going to a car show tomorrow morning, which is Saturday. Today's Friday. But anyways, he just wanted it to look a little smoother and feel smoother. Now, the clay barring does not remove any of the paint material. If you were getting aggressive and you really had some defects you really wanted to get rid of, you would have to use some sort of an abrasive like sandpaper, something like that, that's going to actually remove material, flatten it out, take off the top layer of damaged clear. But we're not going to that level right now. All right, I'm gonna go get the buffer set up. So what I'm using here is the final polishing stage of 3M's Perfect It. This is the ultra fine foam polishing pad with the matching ultra fine polish. There's a lot coarser steps that I normally do first with matching coarser pads, but for this, we're just doing a quick cleanup. I'm using my big DeWalt buffer that I've buffed many paint jobs with. But like I said, you can get the same pretty professional result using this off the shelf, one of those little cheap hand polishing jobs. All right, I'm going to apply this polish to my buffing pad. I don't really like applying it to the surface unless you spread it. I guess I'll show you how to do that too. Don't put a whole bunch on it or you'll make a huge mess. I'd put just a little on there. My pad's a little dry, so I'll have to work it a little bit. I got a tiny bit on the pad too. You want to spread it all over the whole surface. You don't want any big visible chunks, or when you turn the buffer on, it's going to sling it all over the place. And all your compound's going to go on the floor, and your motor, and your chrome, and your glass, and everything else. I turned it on low speed. You can get the same result with a small palms type buffer sander, the cheap ones like you can get at a parts store. This is just a relatively minor cleanup. When your buffing pad is dry, you want to keep your buff time down kind of to a minimum. As soon as your compound starts to dry, you pull it off and reapply compound, wipe it off. Once your pad gets some material in it, then you can go ahead and speed it up. Spend a little more time buffing. Then I just have a bucket of water and a damp rag, wipe it off. You don't want to let compound that's dry sit on the surface, so just keep your rag damp and go over it in between your passes. Never ever just apply more compound and just go right back to it. You have to wipe it smooth. Helps you see where you're at anyways. All right, we'll do the next pass. I'll work it for a little bit longer this time. That's probably all this is gonna need. 2 passes and it'll be plenty good for what we're going for here. And I gotta do the whole entire truck before tomorrow, or really before quitting time. I'm doing this on the clock. My guy that's normally here is sick, been sick for 2 days. So I'm by myself, so I can do this without getting interrupted. It's looking pretty good. I'll probably just go ahead and hit it one more time, just quick. It's made $1 million difference so far. I don't know if you can tell start to finish. You probably can't, but here in person, by feel and just by looking at it, it's substantially better. And the color starts to change a little bit too as you get the contamination off. The color's brightening up a lot more gloss. Kind of the orangey look is coming back to it. All right, and it feels freaking awesome. Feels brand new. You can do a whole car, just clay bar it in a light buff in 3 or 4 hours. So, and make a substantial difference to the look and the quality of the paint. Then you can go just give it a wipe down and get done buffing it and apply your favorite wax, which I like Meguiar's products. They've always been my go-to for a long time. You can get yourself set up with compound, one of those small hand buffers, And your detailing kit, 150 bucks. And you can just make a major difference on the fit and quality of your paint. Make it look a lot better. All right, now I'm gonna get a clean paper towel and wipe it down. Then I'll pull you off the hood there and let you kind of have a comparison of what's been done and what hasn't. Just dry it with a clean cloth. It could use a wet sand and buff, like a more aggressive approach, but he'll be thrilled to death with this. If this had been a high quality paint product, like what I normally use, it would clean up and look just almost like the day I shot it. All right, let me get you off the hood here. Hopefully I don't drop you. If I do, hope you don't break any bones. All right. We did the tops of this fender. It's pretty hard to get a good. You see the undone. Just see the contamination just sitting all over the surface of the paint. And then here, there's just almost nothing. You can see a little bit of like pinholing and stuff like that. That's typical of cheap clears. They just shrink back real bad. There's just nothing you can do about it. If your car sits indoors most of the time, you don't have a problem, but if it sits outside in the sun and gets baked, you're gonna have issues. You see the color just looks just slightly deeper, more orange. Hood's kind of dull. Try to get both in the same frame. The reflectivity is a lot better. See the stuff on the wall. As opposed to that, it's kind of dull. So, for not much work, you can do your whole vehicle and make it look a lot better. So, thanks for watching, as usual. This is just a real quick comparison. I did one side of the roof, the near side, and the side over there I did not do. You can see the amount of contamination on the surface there, and clearly see where it starts and stops. All right, y'all, it's done. Ready to go home and go to a car show tomorrow. Turned out pretty good overall. I probably got about 4 hours, maybe 5 in it. It's really the first heavy detailing paintwork correction it's had since it's painted. So for what it is, it's pretty good. Cheap $100 a gallon clear. Not what I'd recommend if it's going to sit outside much, but cleaned up good. Owner's going to be happy with it. Kind of like the stance with the half-ton truck chassis. But, well, hope y'all like it. And as usual, I appreciate you watching. And if you like this kind of thing and you want to see more, just hit the like button and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.